What if the root of all physical suffering, like poverty, exploitation, even starvation, isn't actually physical at all?
Right. What if it's deeper than that?
Exactly.
Yeah.
What if the chains keeping society down are entirely psychic? Welcome to today's deep dive. We are just thrilled to have you with us today.
Yeah, it's going to be a really good one.
Because today, we are opening up a rather profound intellectual toolkit. We're pulling from some incredibly fascinating source material. It's from excerpts of a text called Awakened Conscience, The Path of Rationalistic Mentality.
And it is just a remarkable piece of philosophy. I mean, it forces us to completely reevaluate the baseline mechanics of how society functions.
Oh, absolutely.
How we consume information and ultimately, the hidden ways we're manipulated every single day.
And that is exactly our mission for you today.
Mm-hmm.
We are going to explore how to cut through false information, how to spot hypocrites who are just, hiding in plain sight.
Hiding right in front of us, yeah.
Right. And how to transform raw, unfiltered data into a truly awakened conscience. Okay, let's unpack this. Because the foundational claim in our source material is quite a paradigm shift.
It really is.
It argues that to cure human bondage, you have to realize the origin point isn't in the physical world, it starts in the mind.
Which is, it's a heavy concept to digest initially, because when we think of exploitation or deep suffering, we usually visualize physical limitations.
Yeah, like a lack of resources or physical force, tangible barriers.
Exactly. But the framework we are looking at posits that while those are undoubtedly real physical phenomena, they are merely the symptoms.
Just the symptoms.
Right. The disease itself is a defective psychic mentality. The deepest agonies a person can experience are fundamentally driven by psychological intent.
Which makes sense.
The mind operates independently from matter, yet it dictates how matter is used to either help or harm.
It's almost like the physical action is just a blunt instrument, but the psychological malice behind it is what leaves the generational scar.
That's a great way to put it.
And the source takes this a step further, illustrating this powerful connection between the physical, the psychic, and the spiritual world.
Yeah, it gets really interconnected here.
It does. It brings up basic material needs. Food, clothing, medical treatment. Obviously, those are physical things.
Sure.
But the author argues that manipulating those basic needs directly damages people spiritually.
And we can see the mechanics of that when the author discusses people who treat spirituality or religion as a stock in trade.
Oh, yeah. This part was fascinating.
Right. These are individuals who leverage faith purely for selfish material gain. By deceiving people in the psychic sphere to extract physical wealth, they are triggering a devastating chain reaction.
Because they aren't just stealing capital.
Exactly. They're stealing trust. The resulting disillusionment can cause the victims to become entirely apathetic to the very concept of spirituality.
They completely bankrupt the concept of faith for everyone around them. I mean, if the person claiming to be your spiritual guide is actually just picking your pocket,
you're going to stop believing in the existence of a higher good altogether.
Right. Why wouldn't you?
And that spiritual deprivation is framed as the ultimate crime here. So we see the entire mechanism at play. A defective psychic mentality in the exploiter manifests as material theft, which ultimately inflicts severe spiritual damage on the collective.
Wow.
So to fix this, the author insists we have to confront the people harboring this defective mentality.
Right, because if these psychological manipulators are actively damaging the psychic sphere, we have to look at who is actually pulling the strings.
Precisely.
And the author splits these actors into two distinct camps. First, we have the reactionaries. And honestly, reading the descriptions in the text, the reactionaries are almost refreshingly straightforward about their hostility.
Yeah, they really do not hide their intentions at all.
Not even a little bit.
The source quotes this archetype openly declaring things like, "We won't grant liberty to the people. We won't provide them with full stomach meals."
It's just so blatant.
It is. They say, "We will keep them languishing in poverty, or else where shall we find menials for our domestic chores?"
I mean, they are blunt instruments of exploitation. You don't have to guess what their agenda is because they literally announce it.
Right.
But then the text introduces a second group, and this is where it gets highly relevant to our modern world. The text warns us about the vocal revolutionaries.
What's fascinating here is the psychological profile the text builds for the second group. It introduces the concept of the human chameleon.
The human chameleon.
Yeah. These are hypocrites who are incredibly difficult to detect because they actively camouflage their defective mentality under this thick veil of false sentiment.
They're sneaky.
Very. They master the vocabulary of progress. They talk glibly of revolution outwardly, but in their heart of hearts, they were terrified of actual change because the current system benefits them.
So what does this all mean for us? It's easy to spot a cartoon villain who wants to keep people poor to have domestic help. But how do we identify these vocal revolutionaries?
Well, it's tricky, right? Because they are the ones wearing the T-shirt of the cause, but secretly investing in the problem.
Oh, you see this everywhere now.
Definitely.
Think about corporate greenwashing, where a company spends millions on an ad campaign about saving the oceans while quietly lobbying to deregulate toxic dumping.
Right, or performative activism on social media.
Yes.
Where the goal isn't actually to solve the issue, but to gain social currency from pretending to care.
And because they are gilded chameleons, standard observation fails us. You can easily spot a reactionary because their words match their harmful actions.
Exactly.
But the chameleon's words contradict their actions, creating this cognitive dissonance that makes them incredibly dangerous to society.
Right, so exposing them requires a specialized intellectual tool set.
So how do we actually pull the mask off?
Well, the author's first line of defense is what they simply call study.
Study. But before you picture sitting in a library reading dusty encyclopedias, the definition of study here is much more active.
Yeah, much more dynamic. The author defines study as the intensive, internal, subjective assimilation of external objective happenings.
That's a mouthful.
It is, but in simpler terms, everything happening in the world is an external event. And study is the deliberate intellectual process of absorbing and making sense of that reality.
And a really empowering detail here is that study isn't restricted to the literate elite.
Not at all.
The text breaks it down into literal study, which is reading and writing, and non-literal study, which is gathering information by listening to discourses, engaging in debates, or just directly observing the world through your senses.
It's a true democratization of knowledge. Anyone can study.
Anyone.
But to organize this vast amount of information, the framework separates knowledge into two categories: transcendental and non-transcendental.
Right.
Transcendental knowledge operates entirely in the spiritual realm, deriving from a universal nucleus. It is completely divorced from worldly gain, administrative power, or political ideologies.
Actually, the source issues a pretty stern warning about that, stating that anyone who uses transcendental knowledge to hoodwink the masses deserves extreme reprobation.
Yes, very strong words there. But for the practical mechanics of our discussion today, the author sets transcendental knowledge aside.
So,
Our focus is non-transcendental knowledge, the material, day-to-day data we consume. This is the arena where we fight the chameleons.
here is where I have to pause and look at the practicality of this. Because you might think, okay, I'll just gather a ton of non-transcendental knowledge, I'll study relentlessly, and I'll be immune to being manipulated.
That would be nice.
But the text immediately pulls the rug out from under us. It claims that study inherently possesses two massive critical defects.
Right. The first is the defect due to ignorance.
Tell us about that.
This happens when a fundamental error is simply grandfathered into the collective consciousness. The person who taught you, or the author of the book you are studying, possessed a flaw in their own comprehension.
Ah, I see.
So you learn their theory, you assimilate it internally, and now their ignorance is the foundation of your worldview.
It's the blind leading the blind.
Exactly.
But the second defect is even more insidious, and it's the defect due to change in time.
This one is fascinating.
The text uses a very practical, historical example. It notes that in the author's childhood, geography books explicitly stated that Allahabad was the capital of Uttar Pradesh.
Which was absolutely accurate according to the temporal reality of that moment.
Right, the data was sound when the ink dried on the page.
The time didn't stop.
No, it didn't. Lucknow eventually became the capital. So if you rigorously study that outdated geography book today, your intensive study actually makes you factually wrong.
Yep.
It's like downloading an update for your smartphone, feeling secure that your device is protected, only to realize the software is already 5 years out of date.
That's a perfect analogy.
It gives you the illusion of competence while leaving you completely vulnerable to modern threats. And we see this today with how rapidly scientific consensus can shift. I mean, think about the early days of a global health crisis, where the true study of one month is debunked by the true study of the next.
And that temporal vulnerability is exactly why relying on study alone is insufficient. If your internal assimilation of reality is based purely on absorbing external information, you are at the mercy of whatever data you happen to ingest.
Whether it's outdated, ignorant, or intentionally fabricated.
Exactly.
If our sources and books can be fundamentally flawed by time and ignorance, aren't we just building a house on a bad foundation? How can study be a weapon against hypocrisy if the weapon itself is inherently broken?
That raises a really important question, and the author doesn't shy away from it. Building a worldview on defective study creates a specific psychological vulnerability. It leads directly to a cognitive trap that the text calls geo-sentiment. When your study is limited or flawed, your emotional attachments become tied to an artificially small, distorted version of reality.
Oh, and the text references an old concept to explain this, right? The frog trapped in a well.
Yes. The frog believes the damp walls around it constitute the entire universe. Until it sees a pool, then a pond, and finally the ocean, it remains trapped in that illusion.
But applying this to our listeners' daily reality, the modern equivalent is so much more insidious.
It really is.
It's exactly like being trapped in an algorithmic social media echo chamber. The algorithm feeds you a constant stream of validating data, ensuring you never see the pool, the pond, or the ocean outside your specific ideological well.
And the human chameleons we discussed earlier, they are the ones programming the algorithm.
Oh, wow.
They weaponize this geo-sentiment, using high-sounding, emotive language to sway the sensitive parts of the human psyche. They bypass logic entirely by sentimentalizing the population.
With phrases like, our native land is inherently superior, or we are a race of heroes.
Exactly. And once that geo-sentiment takes root, rationality just evaporates.
It really does. And the source provides some staggering examples of how this manipulates people into cheering against their own survival.
Yeah, these examples are pretty dark.
It paints a picture of populations repeating, parrot-like, my golden land, I adore you, boasting about their nation's endless water and bountiful fruit exports.
But when you apply actual objective study to the situation,
Right. What's the reality?
the statistical reality is grim. The region is suffering from acute water scarcity. They lack basic drinking water, to say nothing of agricultural irrigation.
All right.
Their agricultural sector has collapsed to the point where they are importing thousands of tons of food grains just to stave off famine.
The imagery the text uses here is haunting. It describes citizens who are so destitute they are surviving by importing rotten flour from distant countries, soaking it in water, and eating it as a paste.
It's awful.
Yet because their minds are infected with geo-sentiment, they are still marching in the streets, chanting about the glory of their golden land.
It's a terrifying display of how false narratives override the survival instinct.
Completely.
It demonstrates the paralyzing power of sentiment. And the author provides another example that borders on the absurd to drive this point home.
Here's where it gets really interesting and honestly a little funny.
Yeah.
The text describes these vocal revolutionaries standing on riverbanks, proclaiming that their native river water is so profoundly pure that simply drinking it grants spiritual liberation to every single protoplasmic cell in your body.
It is the ultimate fusion of exploiting physical needs and spiritual aspirations. They are literally selling salvation in a cup of water.
But the text humorously dismantles this by pointing out the painfully obvious. There are millions of fish and aquatic creatures living their entire lives submerged in that river, and none of them appear to be attaining spiritual liberation.
Right. The fish aren't liberated.
Not at all. To add insult to injury, objective scientists examined that so-called sacred water and concluded it was so toxic it wasn't even fit for bathing.
Yet people will still drink it. They become completely bogged down in what the author appropriately terms a marshy quagmire of the intellect.
Marshy quagmire.
When sentiment replaces logic, evidence no longer matters.
Okay, but if people are so easily sentimentalized into cheering for rotten flour and toxic water, how do we actually wake them up? Just reading more books clearly isn't enough. Their study is already corrupted by the well they live in.
Right.
So what is the actual antidote? How do we break the algorithm?
To escape the quagmire of geo-sentiment, the framework insists we must elevate our cognitive processing. We have to ascend to the next level of intellectual evolution.
Okay, how do we do that?
The author demands that we actively liberate our intellect to experience true cognitive freedom. This requires a rigorous discipline process termed rationalistic mentality.
Rationalistic mentality.
Yes, which eventually culminates in an awakened conscience.
So step 1 was study, gathering the raw, potentially flawed data. Step 2 is activating that rationalistic mentality. And the golden rule of this mentality is deceptively simple.
Never, under any circumstances, automatically accept what is written or spoken.
Ever.
Exactly. Even if you read it, even if you understand the grammar and the syntax, your mental acceptance of the concept must be withheld. You must subject the information to intense verification.
But wait, weighing the pros and cons sounds great on paper. But human beings are terrible at being objective. We have confirmation bias. We desperately want our own team to be right.
Of course we do.
So how does the author suggest we bypass our own psychological biases to evaluate things accurately?
That is the exact friction the author anticipates. The text distinguishes between making a mere decision.
Which is what happens when you let your biases win.
Exactly. Making a mere decision versus reaching a siddhanta.
Siddhanta.
Yes, it's a Sanskrit term that translates specifically to a logical decision. It requires forcing yourself to rigorously analyze both the positive and the negative dimensions of an idea, stripping away your emotional attachment to the outcome.
That's tough.
It is. But if the positive objectively outweighs the negative, you cautiously accept it. If the negative is predominant, you reject it.
So study is the raw data, rationalistic mentality is the processor, and conscience is the final quality control.
That's a really good way to visualize it.
But, and this is the turning point of the entire framework, even when you reach that logical decision, that siddhanta, you still aren't done. Just because a decision is highly logical doesn't mean it is right.
Right.
You have to submit it to step 3, the ultimate quality control test.
And that final crucible is called viveka, which translates to conscience. You take your thoroughly analyzed logical decision and you ask a non-negotiable set of questions.
What are they?
Is this idea conducive to human welfare? Does it promote the happiness and benefit of all beings? Does it support the spiritual and material well-being of the collective?
It's the ultimate filter. If your logical decision passes the test of human welfare, the text says you must support it, propagate it wholeheartedly, and dedicate yourself to implementing it.
Yes.
But if the answer is no, if rejecting the idea is what actually benefits humanity, then your rejection must be absolute. Yeah. Your no becomes final.
Though there is a brilliant piece of nuance the author includes here.
Oh.
If a concept has a predominant negative impact right now, but your rational analysis suggests that with proper cultivation or a shift in circumstances, it might serve human welfare in the future, then your no is not necessarily permanent.
It goes into the maybe later file. We don't discard the tool forever. We just recognize it's dangerous to use right now.
Exactly. But the core mechanic remains the same. This relentless discrimination, filtering every piece of data, every political promise, every social movement through the strict lens of collective human welfare, is the definition of an awakened conscience. Wow.
It is the only reliable weapon against dogmas, pseudo-humanistic strategies, and the human chameleons who thrive in the quagmire of sentiment.
The text mentions that protecting the collectivity is actually more important than saving yourself. Why is the collective welfare the ultimate benchmark for our conscience? Why can't an awakened conscience just be a tool for personal enlightenment?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the author is laying the groundwork for a societal structure they call neo-humanism.
Neo-humanism.
Right. Neo-humanism fundamentally rejects individualism at the expense of the whole. It relies on the spiritual and material elevation of all beings.
I see.
An awakened conscience is not a selfish badge of honor so you can feel intellectually superior to the frogs in the well. It is a mandate.
A mandate to act.
Yes. It provides you with the total strength, especially the vocal and total strength, required to actively dismantle societal exploitation. You cannot protect the collectivity from human chameleons if you are only guarding your own backyard. It's about recognizing that if the water in the well is poisoned, you aren't safe just because you know how to swim. You have to pull everyone else out of the well with you.
That's beautifully said. And that requires an ever-vigilant conscience. You cannot passively consume information.
Really?
You can't just nod along to a charismatic speaker or applaud a well-written book. You have to constantly run the diagnostic. Study, rationalize, apply conscience.
We have mapped out a massive intellectual journey today. We started by tracing the psychic root of suffering, exposed the chameleons who exploit us, identified the flaws in just studying, and hopefully we all gained a new perspective by laughing at the unliberated fish swimming in the toxic river of geo-sentiment.
Definitely.
And finally, we arrived at the rigorous 3-step method for achieving true intellectual freedom. Gathering the data, applying a rationalistic mentality to reach a logical decision, and filtering that decision through the ultimate test of human welfare to awaken our conscience.
It is a profound and demanding roadmap. It asks us to constantly challenge our own assumptions in a world that is heavily incentivized to manipulate our sentiments for profit and power.
And for you, listening to this right now, navigating a daily reality of relentless information overload, algorithmic echo chambers, and pseudo-experts on every feed. This awakened conscience isn't just some lofty, abstract philosophical theory.
Not at all.
It is the most practical, vital survival tool you can possess. It is how you protect your own mind.
And more importantly, it is how you ensure that your actions and beliefs are genuinely serving the welfare of humanity, rather than accidentally advancing the hidden agenda of a chameleon.
So what does this all mean for us moving forward? As always, we want to leave you with a thread to pull on your own, a provocation to test your newly awakened conscience.
I love this part.
The text argues fiercely that we must permanently reject ideas that do not serve human welfare. Our no must be final to protect the collective. But earlier in our deep dive, we dissected the defect of time. How an absolute truth, like the capital of Uttar Pradesh being Allahabad, can become entirely false simply because the clock keeps ticking.
Yeah.
So here's something to chew on. If the relentless passage of time can change the concrete, documented facts of our geography, could time also change the ultimate moral verdict of our conscience?
Oh, that's a tough one.
How do we know when a permanent no that protected society yesterday suddenly needs to become a yes to save society tomorrow?
That is a tension that cannot be resolved with a simple formula. It requires a conscience that never sleeps.
It really does. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Before you go back to scrolling through the noise of the day, remember to look past the physical symptoms. Search for the psychic flaws in the narratives around you. And above all, keep that conscience ever vigilant. We'll catch you next time.